Hey, this is Josh Weidman. I'm here for today's REI 360 training. I want to thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about something that has really been big in the news over the last several years, and that is foreclosures. But specifically, I want to talk about building relationships with asset managers and CEOs of banks so that we have a personal relationship with that bank. Now, this has been something that has been an ongoing project for me, and like many other real estate investors, when foreclosures, when we got this first huge wave of foreclosures, and it became apparent that this is going to be a really great income stream, a great opportunity for investors to get into, I wanted to contact asset managers at different banks. And over the years, every big bank I could think of, I'm trying to reach out and find out who this asset manager is. Who's the person that controls the strings, that makes the decisions for these banks, and has the ability to let me buy this property for what I want to buy it for. What I found was that initially there were a handful of people assigned to different regions around the country, and they had limited levels of availability. But as time went on and the number of assets grew and grew and grew that these banks were holding, it just grew and grew and grew. The idea of one person making a decision on the buying and selling and listing of these properties, it became really unrealistic. And so what happened was these larger banks, they built these big processes and infrastructures that made it less and less desirable to deal directly with an asset manager. So let's fast forward till today. Okay? Here's what I do. I work with small banks, small local banks, and here's why. The first step in building a personal relationship with a bank to get these bank assets is going to be choosing the right bank. We touched on this a little bit already, but big banks, the attraction of a big bank is that they've got a ton of loans out there. Since they have a ton of loans, they've got a lot of foreclosures. That means a lot of opportunity, a lot of potential deals. They also have a lot of process and a lot of paperwork, which leads to no real clear decision maker. I want to tell a little bit of the story here. There's an REO website that I frequent where you can go on and you bid on properties, and I've had some mixed success. But about 6 months ago, there's a property that came on the market. It was listed for $220,000. The actual value of the property when it's fixed up was $300,000. I went over, looked at the property, and I found that it needed a good bit of work. And so my offer, initially, I was thinking that the highest price I would pay is somewhere about $150,000. Made an offer at $120,000, thinking that the bank would counter. Well, they certainly did. Remember, the list price is $220,000. They countered with $215,000. It was a $5,000 price drop, but nowhere near my initial offer. So I declined and we moved on. Then, about 10 days later, they dropped the price $10,000. So now it's listed for $210,000. This game went on and on and on until the list price on the property was $170,000. I offered $150,000. They came back at $165,000. Well, again, $150,000 was my high-end number. I lost the property, but this went on literally for weeks of going back and forth and me making offers, them countering $5,000 less, and then when nobody bought the property, they dropped the price $10,000, and there's a reason for that. The reason is that that's their process. That's what they've implemented to get the highest dollar amount. This is indicative of these larger banks because they have such a, they got really deep pockets. You got deep pockets? Well, you can hold on. You can just wait until you're able to sell it as close to market value as you can. Now, let's look at the flip side of the equation. We've got these small local banks. Now, these small local banks are investing in just small, very local geographical areas. Well, guess what? That's where I buy, local geographical areas. So that's a match right off the bat. But because they're just investing in those small areas, they also have a lot fewer foreclosures. Maybe not as a percentage of their total portfolio, but because they got a smaller loan portfolio. Smaller loan portfolio, fewer number of foreclosures. So, this is maybe the downside is that we're not going to be looking at, hundreds and hundreds of new properties every week. We might only be looking at, 50 properties on an annual basis that they have to foreclose on. But one of the major benefits that you don't have with a big bank is a clear decision maker. Oftentimes these small banks, they don't even have an asset manager. Oftentimes that you're just dealing with the CEO. These are non-performing assets on their bottom line, and since the portfolio is so small that of these foreclosed and bank-owned properties, they don't need somebody full-time to manage this. It's a secondary or tertiary responsibility of somebody in charge, and at the end of the day, the decision maker is often the CEO that says, yep, I'll accept this price or no, I won't. So the other benefit here is that the non-performing assets in their portfolio, they have a pretty significant impact on their bottom line. These are dollar amounts that they're large enough to make a real difference at the end of a quarter, at the end of the year. So it's something to keep in mind, something that we're going to touch on. So that brings us to how do we find the contacts? Now, asset manager versus CEO, depending on the size of the bank. If you have a really large national or international bank, they're going to have asset managers who have assistants, who have assistants, who have assistants, and you'll never get in touch with the person that's actually making the decisions, okay? On the flip side, if you've got a larger local bank, they've got, maybe they're located in, maybe 2 or 3 different states. In my case, I'm in Philadelphia, which is close to New Jersey and Delaware and Maryland. So maybe they have branches in 4 different states, but they're still not really all that big. They might have an asset manager that's going to look over any non-performing assets in the portfolio. But some of the even smaller banks, as I mentioned, the CEO is going to be the one that's essentially going to be making the decision on how much to accept on the property. So the next step here is, after we've discovered the contact, we're going to build a contact list. And what we want to do is you're going to go out and you're going to find a list of the foreclosures in your county or your target market for the last 6 months or year. I started with a 6-month list, and then I updated it on a quarterly basis. And essentially what I did was I went out and said, okay, these are all of the properties that were foreclosed on in my target area over the last 6 months. Then I took another step and said, okay, who was the bank that initiated this foreclosure? Okay? Now, of those, thousands and thousands of foreclosures, the likelihood is 5-10% of those maybe are these small local banks. So 90% of the contacts and the properties on that list are just going to be wiped away. The 5 or 10% that are left over, we're going to take to the next step, and that is actually to pursue, find the right contact. This can be done by either doing a little bit of research yourself if the list is small enough, but I recommend outsourcing it to a researcher to find out who's in charge of the non-performing assets. And if you can't find the direct person, look for the CEO. Now we have a contact name, a person, we've got the bank. The next step is going to be to reach out and find contact information. That could be a phone number, it could be a mailing address, it could be an email address. If it's an email address or a phone number, it's probably going to go to an assistant. That is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You want to deal with a person that's going to be transferring the information and getting the attention of the decision maker. So we're going to get all this information. If you are not a researcher yourself, I recommend going on a third-party, virtual assistant site, some place like Elance or Guru.com. Hire a researcher just for a few dollars an hour to go out and compile this information. If you are a researcher, great, but I'm not. So that's what I did. I compiled my list. So now I'm taking that information and now I'm going to build it into a campaign. There's a couple things that you got to think about and build into this campaign. First of all, with this list, because you're pulling information off the internet, you're going to have pretty much 3 campaigns built out of your contact information, because some information you're not going to have. You might only have a phone number. You might only have an email address or a mailing address for the person that you want to contact, for the CEO or asset manager at the small bank. So, you want to make sure that you construct your marketing campaign with that understanding. If it's if you're calling through these people, you might only have 5 calls once a month or every quarter or whatever the case might be. If you're sending out mailing pieces, the same thing. But we might, in a metropolitan area, you might only be talking about 30 contacts. It doesn't sound like an awful lot, but we're looking for the quality of the contact, okay? So let's talk about building your campaign. First, we got to attract their interest. We're going to do this by determining their motivation. I found this information out by dealing with an asset manager who was the CEO of a local bank. I've purchased several properties, and he always calls me at the same times every year. And you know what that is? It's close to the end of the quarter. Let's talk about what their motivation are. What do these asset managers and CEOs of these banks, what do they want? Number one, they want to recover the investment. They are not real estate investors. If they can get back their initial investment and the costs for the foreclosure and all that kind of stuff, they're thrilled. They just want to get out of it. Second, they want to eliminate the non-performing asset on their balance sheet. They want to get it off. And guess what? At the end of each quarter, if that thing disappears, man, they are thrilled. And number three, they want to get rid of the problem. The bottom line is they do not want this. They deal in money. They do not deal in real estate. You and I, we're real estate investors. That's our job. So we need to step in and be the knight in shining armor that comes in and solves their problem. The second point of the campaign is the timing. Anytime you're starting a new campaign, take a couple weeks, put your mailing list together, get your step-by-step mailers and emails and phone call scripts together, and you want to launch this a couple of weeks before the end of the quarter. I like, if it's first contact, I like it a month beforehand, because a lot of times they're scrambling at the end of the quarter with a couple properties that just can't get rid of, and they need somebody to take them off their hands. And when you contact them, hey, you just happen to get them at the right time. Okay, so now we need to build a relationship. So the first part is attract their attention. This can be done with a mailer and that feeds into their motivations. This can be done with a phone call that says, hey, I wonder if you have any assets that I can help you get off your books before the end of the quarter. This could be an email, whatever the case is. But now you've got their attention. Now we're going to build this relationship. I was able to get in with one bank because they actually called me because they found me online. They had a tough asset that they could not get rid of. Property was listed at $50,000, $40,000, $30,000. It was under contract at $25,000, and the buyer fell through. They just want to get it off their books. They were really frustrated. They wanted to close by the end of the month. My offer was $15,000. They accepted it. I signed it for $25,000. We settled, and now I get an email a month before every quarter. They get a phone call and an email from me, and every time they've got assets, they're contacting me. So ask for something that's tough. Ask for something that's sticking on their books that they can't get rid of, and be the knight in shining armor, be the Superman who comes in and solves their problem. Talk to them about how you can help them. You don't want to go in there and, you're not pitching yourself as, oh, I'm a real estate investor, oh, I'm looking to take these off your hands. You want to talk to them about what their needs are and how you and your business can help facilitate their needs. Solve their problem. Okay? Step three, if you want to continue to build this relationship and you want it to go on and on and on and on and on and really, have a great relationship with this bank, you better perform. If you tell them you can close on something and you don't close, you're going to have a problem. That's the bottom line. So, perform after you find something tough and you talk to them about how you can help them solve their problem. Next, we're going to follow up. You've made the initial contact. All right, so in the initial phase of this, I'm going to use a mailing campaign because this is a perfect example. Initial phase, you want to get their attention. You do this by sending a mailer. And in the mailer it says something like, how many properties are affecting your bottom line? Headline and whatever. And you got a balance sheet and a picture or whatever. They don't respond. Then you send them a letter. Hey, I'm a real estate investor. I just want to let you know, contacting you because I'm interested in purchasing some of your non-performing assets. I know that they can be a problem. Do you have any properties that are a real pain that I can get rid of? I buy everything. And you might have a 4 to 6 week program or mailing campaign where you contact them once a week, or you call them once a week, whatever, and then they respond. Now they respond. Now that transitions us into the building relationship. You're talking to them. You're trying to find out if they have anything that's a problem. After you've tried to help solve that problem, now we go into here's how I can help you, and we get to the bottom line and we close on a deal. Oh, that's awesome. Now we want to cultivate that and follow up in that relationship because we don't just want to do one deal. We want to continually get get leads from them, get properties from them, so we can either sign them, buy them ourselves, build a portfolio, and make this a very inexpensive lead source for us. All right. So now we're gonna do monthly contacts. Could be a letter, a handwritten card, a holiday card, something like that for the first 6 months. Just keep them in the front of, keep you in the front of their mind. You're going to keep people in this list, this monthly contact list, so long as they continue to follow up with you, if they continue to send you properties, if they continue to do this stuff, okay? So the next step is quarterly contacts. After somebody has stopped sending you properties after 6 months, follow up quarterly. Send them holiday contacts and keep them in your queue, but you're not going to spend a lot of time and money on them because they're not performing, okay? And lastly, every time you have a settlement, send out a thank you card. If you've got somebody, if you have a bank that contacted you about selling, they have something they want to sell you, you buy it, you make money, thank them. People appreciate that. Handwritten thank you cards, for $5 you can buy a little box of them. It'll last you for 6 months. So this brings us to step 4. This might have been step 1. We probably could have discussed this in the beginning, and if you're you're coming to the end of this training and you think this should have been first, you're probably right. But why small banks and foreclosures? Why foreclosures at all? Well, first of all, foreclosures, it's a no-brainer. Banks are not in the real estate business. They want to get them off their books. That's motivation. Okay? Why small banks? Because you can deal with the decision maker. Banks are non-emotional sellers. I love non-emotional sellers. That's why lists like, oftentimes, non-owner occupied, eviction lists, things like that, where people have divorced their emotion from the property. It's great sellers. So banks also fall in that category, non-emotional. With a small bank, you're going to have direct communication with the decision maker. Huge benefit in any sales, in any sales negotiation. It's important to be able to talk to the decision maker. And 3, long-term, continual source of leads. This bank, you might buy one property from one seller and make a really nice chunk of change on it, but they're probably not going to have 4, 5, 10, 20, 50 properties to sell you over the next 2, 3, 4 years. A bank will. And you build that relationship, and you might be able to count on 2 or 3 properties every quarter. That's nice, especially since we're dealing with maybe 30 contacts. So, building a portfolio of investments, whether it's wholesale deals, rental properties, flips, whatever. Building personal relationships with banks to buy some of these properties is a really great, a great lead source. It's a great area to concentrate on. You can build the list quickly, focus energy in the beginning, and just monitor that list. And as time goes on, it can lead to a really nice relationship personally, and also a really great source of income. So I encourage you to implement this, get out there, start contacting your local banks, and until the next time, thanks for joining me in this training, and best of luck in your real estate investing.